Welcome to Women's Center and Shelter of Greater Pittsburgh's 50th anniversary community celebration presented by UPMC Health Plan. I'm Cara Sapida, and I am honored to serve as MC tonight for this historic evening among 600 of our closest friends to celebrate 50 years of Women's Center and Shelter, providing safety, healing, and hope to survivors of domestic violence and to their families. Tonight marks my 5th time emceeing this event and volunteering for this cause. It is an important cause. It has significance in my life as a news reporter for WPXI. My path to this stage has been shaped by the people I have encountered as a news reporter covering countless cases of domestic violence. Each story has left a lasting mark on me. The faces of those affected, the enduring pain, and the lives shattered are etched in my memory. I'm going to tell you just one tonight. I vividly remember sitting behind Tierney Ewing in court. If you're not familiar, she is a Washington County woman who had been kidnapped and tortured by her estranged husband. When she bravely pleaded with the judge, "If you let my husband out of jail, he will kill me," I was sitting directly behind her. The weight of her words stayed with me, haunting me even as I lie in bed the night I received the call that her husband had been released. And I couldn't shake the sleepless night that followed upon learning that tragically he did exactly what she feared, and her life had indeed been taken. Beyond the headlines and the statistics, it is the silent cries for help and the shattered families that remain in my heart, as I'm sure they do for many hearts in this room here tonight. I want to extend my heartfelt, sincere thanks to each and every one of you for being here. This overwhelming turnout, this sold-out event that sold out in a day, speaks volumes for the significance of this cause and this organization in this community. Because we know that behind closed doors, most domestic violence remains unseen and unheard. Stories I will never cover. As we gather here tonight, let's pledge to shine a light on these hidden struggles and stand together in solidarity with those who need support. Together, we are grateful for the Women's Center and Shelter, not only for their tireless efforts in helping survivors and children every day, but for their work to build a future where everyone can live free from the shadows of abuse. Before I tell you how tonight is going to play out, I'll direct your attention to your tables, which have already been set with bread and salads. If you have not, please dig in. Courses will be served throughout tonight's entire program, so we ask that you eat it right away while it's hot. Tonight we are going to be honoring posthumously the two women who started it all, Ann Steytler and Ellen Berliner, with the Sherley and Ted Craig Humanitarian Award. Learning about how far the domestic violence movement has come in the past half-century and enjoying an incredible meal along the way. Tonight's program is going to take place over 3 sections spread out during this meal. And the question I think many of you have asked, the bars will remain open during the entire program. We ask that you wait until there's a break to go get another drink. Finally, though we don't typically encourage using cell phones at the table, if you have not already explored the auction, make sure you scan the QR code on the handout you received at registration. You can visit WC&S50.org to check out all of the amazing auction packages for sale. Tonight would not be possible without our many friends in the room. Thank you to longtime partner for this evening's presenting founders sponsor, UPMC Health Plan. for their generosity and commitment to the mission of Women's Center and Shelter. Year after year, you make our community a safer place for survivors of domestic violence and their children, thanks to your support. Thank you to tonight's family supper sponsor, Dianoya's Eatery. Your generosity and willingness to take on this event of this magnitude on Mother's Day weekend has not gone unnoticed. Thank you for making this special for all of us. A special thanks to our staff sponsors, Dwayne Morris and Horn Dollar, as well as the Fox Chapel Area Battle of the Books for underwriting the attendance of the Women's Center staff tonight. Thank you, lastly, to Aspirant, Penn, Ohio, the Pittsburgh Steelers, PNC, and our many other generous sponsors, patrons, and donors who can be found in your program. Your dedication to this work is truly admirable. We thank you all for being here. Now, please help me welcome Diane Holder, President and CEO of UPMC Health Plan.
So thank you very much, and welcome and good evening to everyone. It's so exciting to be able to celebrate with all of you and to really celebrate an amazing history of this incredible organization. You know, when you think back to 50 years ago and some of the courage it took for the founders to come forward in 1974, and we were one of only 6 places in the country that opened for the very first time a women's shelter. You know, that was an era where there was a tremendous amount of civil unrest. You know, the civil rights in the late 60s, early 70s, across college campuses. We saw women, really, it was the second really wave of feminism that was trying to talk about inequality and why women's rights mattered. And there were a lot of reasons why women's rights mattered, and this was one of them. Because when we look at domestic violence, we know it hits all kinds of women from all kinds of social classes, but it disproportionately hurts women who are vulnerable and women whose economic means are not too significantly robust for the needs they have. And so when we think about what people did here in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh was a groundbreaking place. And so I think there's so much to be proud of and so much to really think about in this history. So one of the things that we also know is that domestic violence was not something people talked about. Interpersonal violence was really kind of hidden in the closet, and there was almost an acceptance of it, quite honestly. People weren't so sure that it was such a bad thing. And one of the things that we know has changed is that women have raised their voices, and they've basically expected and demanded legal protection, economic help, and places like the Women's Center and Shelter have really been on the rise to help. One of the things we know that happened during the pandemic was that domestic violence increased. And it's not a surprise because all sorts of bad things happened during the pandemic, right? When you look at the increase in mental health problems, the increase in substance use, the increase in people losing, the loneliness, the isolation. You know, for many people, being in their home is not the place they feel safe or want to be. Going to work is a relief. And we're still kind of struggling with this whole issue of the hybrid world and what it means. So part of what we have to do, I think, is to really recognize some of these really, truly profound problems that we're still facing. I have been very committed, I hope you feel that, to helping issues for women and their kids. You know, I started my life as a clinician and in psychiatry, and so my early years in training and in my early years of my career were working with families. And you see, when you work with families, you work with women, you work with kids who are depressed, what you see is a lot of the things that they're struggling with in their lives, and that certainly this was one of the big issues. So one of the opportunities we had when I was at Western Psychiatric and eventually was running that organization, we had the opportunity to look at what was happening with our own employees. And one of the things that we found was a percentage of them, a pretty significant percentage of them, and this goes back like 30 years, 25 years, significant percentage said they did not feel safe. And we were a little surprised, actually. Here we were, we're in a big mental health place, but we didn't quite get that our people very close to home needed help. And so we started this whole infrastructure in our employee assistance program. That program eventually became Standing Firm. And we took that program out to the community, and we built that to help employers look differently at the symptoms and the problems. For a long time, every time somebody from the health plan or other places would be dismissed from their job, every time I signed it and it was a woman, I wondered if part of the problem was she couldn't come to work. Now, it wasn't the majority of them, of course, but it did make you wonder. So we've lived through the pandemic. We're recovering. We're coming through it. We think there's some better help coming nationally. I'm really pleased that there's under the Biden-Harris administration, they've launched the National Plan to End Gender-Based Violence Strategies for Action. And part of why this is important is that it's such a systemic problem, and so many agencies are working on some slice of the issue. But we know that this is intergenerational, and we know that what we have to do is help the families when the children are young, because that's where the imprinting occurs and how we need to really resolve some of these issues early and as aggressively as we can. So I want to praise the Women's Center and Shelter for remarkable work for 50 years and give them a very big round of applause. So thank you, and with great pleasure, I ask you to join me in welcoming Nicole Molinaro, President and CEO of the Women's Center and Shelter.
Thank you so much, Diane. Thank you to UPMC Health Plan, Dianoya's Eatery, and all of our wonderful sponsors for their continued support. We literally couldn't do this without you. I have to say, I have been excited about this moment for about 5 years. It is such a great honor to be the president and CEO of Women's Center and Shelter at this momentous time in our history, and to be following in the footsteps of our pioneering mothers, and to be only the 4th CEO in those 50 years. Such an honor. So let's take a second and think back to what life was like 50 years ago in 1974. Gas was 50 cents. The speed limit was 55 miles an hour. The barcode scanner had just been invented, but we were years away from using fancy electronics like computers and cell phones. If we wanted to buy something, God forbid, we had to actually go to a brick and mortar store and buy it. And speaking of, 1974 marks the first year that women could open their own credit card. 50 years ago, I know, right? 50 years ago, our founders, Anne and Ellen, inspired by the civil rights movement, inspired by the women's movement, opened the doors of one of the first 6 domestic violence programs in the country, the then named Women's Center South, to women in need of a safe place. This was a radical new concept at a time when domestic violence, as Diane inferred, it wasn't talked about. It was considered to be a private matter. It wasn't understood as a pattern of power and control that's used in a relationship. It wasn't seen as a public health crisis and wasn't counted as a problem that impacts 1 out of every 4 women, 1 out of every 7 men, and disproportionately impacts those who have been marginalized and historically underserved. Anne and Ellen grew up in an age when society was openly encouraging women to do things like put a ribbon in your hair and have the house tidy and the kids quiet when your husband gets home from work. How did Ann and Ellen go from that to this, to using their own money and getting a small grant to provide safety and healing to 200 women in their first year? It is incredible to think of their bravery, to think of their compassion and their foresight. And it's hard to imagine in those early days when it was just them and a handful of volunteers against the world that Ann and Ellen could have ever dreamed of a night like tonight. I stand before a room absolutely packed with friends, supporters, survivors, volunteers, and advocates who have gathered to celebrate our growth from those humble, courageous beginnings to an agency that provides comprehensive services to more than 7,500 adult and child survivors every year, backed by our amazing, you can clap for that, sure. And we are backed by our amazing community partners, elected officials, and a whole city that turned purple on our May 2nd anniversary just to celebrate. I know, it's fun, right? Our growth could never have been possible without the community's embrace of Ann and Ellen's core radical value that everybody deserves to be safe. We've come a long way, friends, and yet we have so much farther to go. As domestic violence has increased in frequency, in severity, and in complexity since the pandemic started, what keeps us going is the strength of the survivors we serve and the outpourings of support that we've received from the community, from people in this room, from people who never made it off of the waiting list, and for the many more near and far who would like to be here tonight to celebrate with us. Now, I'd like to take a moment to thank some very special people. Women's Center and Shelter has attracted a lot of pretty amazing folks over the years. Our board of directors, now and throughout history, have been smart, forward-thinking, supportive, action-oriented people. Many of you are in the room tonight. If you currently serve or have ever served on our board of directors or our advisory council over the years, we ask you to please stand and be recognized so we can thank you. I have to say there's one or two behind the stage too, and the table's back there, so thank you. There they are. And our staff, past and present. I have no words. Actually, that's not true. I have a lot of words. And the words are fierce, bold, resilient, strong, smart, passionate, compassionate, hardworking, kind, and fun. And wow, are they team players, as is evidenced by the fact that, as Cara mentioned, when we sold out very quickly and more, in more advance than we thought we would, we're faced with the problem that we literally wouldn't have enough space in the room. When we talked to the staff about that, the staff understood the assignment when we asked to move them into a room back there to eat and watch a live stream of the program. Yeah. Thank you to our staff for this accommodation, and thank you every day for being the absolute best work family that anybody could ever imagine. And we have so many staff here, past and present. It's so amazing to see so many former staff who are here tonight. However, since most of them are in the room, I know you just clapped, but do we mind everybody in this room? Actually, hang on a second. If you were a former staff member sitting in this room or a current staff member sitting in this room, stand up for a second. Stand up, stand up. There we go. Look at that. Beautiful. And then you can all stay standing because I'm going to ask everybody, as you're able, to stand up and cheer for the folks that are in that room. Come on, stand up and cheer for them. There we go. Woo! Love you guys. Thank you so much for doing that because our staff are seriously the most amazing people in the whole wide world. And last but not least, thanks to the team who worked tirelessly to make our dreams come true for tonight. Our wonderful 50th anniversary community celebration event leadership committee and working group, our event volunteers, and the staff team of Catherine, Emily, Jessie, Jordy, and Crystal, and the heart and soul, or should I say the blood, sweat, and tears behind the event, Kristen Brown and Jake Phillips. Give it up for them. So it's so important that survivors and their children have the people, the tools, the resources, and the physical space to heal. And as you know, this takes significant resources. In an uncertain world, we wanted to take a minute to thank those who are helping to secure our future by making a planned or legacy gift to WC&S. And tonight, we are proud to announce that we are officially launching our Legacy Society in conjunction with our 50th anniversary. The Lovelace Legacy Society is named in honor of WC&S's longest-serving board director, John Lovelace. Besides being one of my favorite humans on the whole planet, John was only the second male to serve on the board and has been an integral part in making Women's Center what it is today. John recently made a significant legacy gift himself, leading the way for others to do the same. If we can have one more round of applause for John, who is sitting right here. Woo, there he is. Thank you, John, and thank you to those who already made legacy gifts. With your help, we remain committed to serving survivors and their children as long as we're needed. And while we're so excited to be able to celebrate our impact and the community that has made our work possible, it is critical to honor and remember those we've lost over the last 50 years. Last month, on April 11th, we gathered to hold a vigil to honor the memories of the people who have been killed by their partner or ex-partner in Allegheny County. We read the names of 212 people known to be victims of domestic violence homicide before 2007 and recognized that there were likely about 800 more victims who, because of lack of tracking prior to 2007, were not recognized as being killed related to domestic violence. We are honored to have with us tonight the families of several of those beautiful souls lost to senseless violence. Thank you for being here, and thank you for joining in the work to end domestic violence. I ask that we take a moment of silence to honor the approximately 1,000 lives that we've lost in Allegheny County since 1974. For being here tonight, and for your commitment to helping to end abuse in the lives of everyone experiencing domestic violence. Thank you. Although none of us can do this work alone, together we can change our corner of the world. And 50 years from now, may we all be remembered not for our silence and not for our inaction, but how we stood up and spoke up. Stood up to fight domestic violence, stood up to raise domestic violence awareness, to fight the societal roles that allow gender-based violence to prosper. And for one person or many, we hope that we are remembered for making a difference. Thank you all so much for being here tonight, and it's my pleasure to give a warm welcome to one of the chairs of this evening's event, Kristen Hamill. Thank you, everybody.
Chuck and I are thrilled to be chairing the amazing event tonight. Women's Center has a special place in our hearts, and it's been a joy to support the agency, the staff, and those who serve over the years. Tonight, we will learn about Women's Center's history, its founders, its future, and hear directly from survivors about what Women's Center has meant to them. Whether you've stood with Women's Center for decades or you're a new friend, we're excited to share these stories and this meal with you. What an amazing testament to the work of WC&S to have so many people here with us tonight. No matter how you support the mission, big and small, it really does make a difference in the lives of those experiencing domestic violence and in the lives of survivors who are beginning a new chapter. We stand united this evening in support of all victims and survivors, inspired by their bravery, their courage, and their strength. They are the reason that your support means so much. Thank you again for this incredible showing of solidarity. While we hope for a future without domestic violence, we are forever grateful that Women's Center has been here for 50 years and remains here to help in those in need of their life-saving services. Enjoy your evening.
Hi, everyone. I hope everyone is enjoying your meal. Please continue eating even while this program continues. So just a friendly reminder that the silent auction closes at 8:45 sharp. So please remember to get final bids in on your favorite items. It is now my pleasure to welcome Event Committee Chair and WC&S Board Director Rachel Lori Allen for the presentation of the Sherley and Ted Craig Humanitarian Award.
Thank you, Cara. Each year, Women's Center and Shelter and the Craig family honor an individual, group, or organization with the Sherley and Ted Craig Humanitarian Award for their efforts in creating a positive impact on those around them. The award is given in memory of Sherley and Ted Craig, whose legacy of love and generosity is carried on today by their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, some of whom are in attendance tonight. Can the Craig family please stand to be recognized? Tonight, we are posthumously honoring Ann Steytler and Ellen Berliner, the founders of Women's Center and Shelter. Ann and Ellen were dedicated activists and advocates for nonviolence, equality, and dignity for all people. They not only founded Women's Center and Shelter as one of the first 6 domestic violence programs in the United States, but also help shape the model for how we respond to domestic violence and programs across the nation. Their values, that survivors should be believed, given help without judgment, and empowered to make their own choices, have been borne out by decades of success in extending safety and hope to those with nowhere else to turn. And though much has changed at WC&S in those decades, Ann and Ellen's values have remained the same.
Looking back, my earliest memories of what would become the Women's Center were Ellen and Ann talking about creating a resource center for women.
That resource wasn't there before, so one of the reasons they started the storefront was where men had bars to go to or VFW clubs, women had no place to go to connect with one another.
It wasn't until after they had been open for a year as this Women's Resource Center that they discovered a lot of the women that we're calling them were victims of domestic violence, survivors of domestic violence.
So it was a storefront, and there was a sign which I saw as I came in that they just hung up and said, "We're here to help women who are in abusive situations. And can we get help from anybody who has skills at dealing with people who are in a tricky situation?" I was a social worker, and Ann and I knew each other from the Unitarian Church. And we understand that you know how to do this new thing called active listening. So would you be willing to teach that to the volunteers who are going to help the clients coming in? So we did that, and it was great fun.
I became connected to Women's Center and Shelter after a period of about 2.5 years of domestic violence, during which time I couldn't find any way to get out of it because I was 14 when I got married, and a married woman who's a minor, their husband is their legal guardian. So, of course, I couldn't get out. It was very hard. I did not know there was a Women's Center and Shelter until one time when one of the policemen gave me a little card that said, you know, you could call this number. And that's how I got connected with Ellen Berliner and Ann Steytler. I went through the door, and the first thing I noticed was that the quiet. Not the quiet of, a quiet room. The quiet of all my fears. Like, there's no danger here.
In the very early days when this center first started getting going, there were very few other centers. And it could be wonderful that they were one of only 6, but they were only one of 6. So they definitely were hunting each other up, trying to find other people who had realized that this was an issue, and networking and using each other as resources. So I think that they were a seed and an encouragement to all the people who were I say all the people, but the few people who were actually working on this issue.
Ann and Ellen were, I think, 2 of the strongest people I've ever met, 2 of the most brave, the most innovative. To be able to look around them in the early 1970s, the lack of understanding at that point by everybody that domestic violence is not just a one-time occurrence, that it's a pattern of power and control. That was absolutely not understood at that point. So the bravery that they had at starting a whole organization just to work with those who were experiencing something that most of the country didn't believe actually was a problem. That's grit.
I think there was still a lot of stigma attached, even in the late 90s, to talking about it, to being a victim, to admitting that you're a victim. So I think a lot of the work that we were talking about doing at the time was just making sure people were aware of the services, but making sure people felt comfortable and, continually looking for more ways for women who were at risk to find help, whether it was directly, in residence here, looking for counseling, looking for housing, but just getting the word out. I came away from my board service with a much more holistic view of both the challenges of delivering service and, who are all the people impacted, and it can be people you really wouldn't expect to be in that kind of situation.
When I was hired, I was like in the low 30s. I was the 33rd or the 34th employee ever at Women's Center and Shelter. So the growth over that time has just been absolutely wonderful. It has become more acceptable. It has become more okay, if that's proper to say, to be able to talk about intimate partner violence. It used to be like we didn't want to tell people where we work because of the stigma that goes along with it and everything that comes, but I'm proud to say where I'm working. I will say that's something else that I would say has increased awareness. Now when I say where I work, people immediately say, oh, thank you. That's such hard work, or that's such good work. So people do recognize that it is something that we still need to do.
When I was hired in 1996, I was the first attorney to work as a staff person at Women's Center and Shelter. There was a small Allegheny County task force with participation from different folks in the justice system, but there were not many specialists in domestic violence. So now we have a domestic violence unit of police in the Pittsburgh Police Department. We have domestic violence prosecutors in the district attorney's office. We have probation officers who are domestic violence specialists. We have judges who specialize in domestic violence. None of that existed in 1996, or very little of it. Most exciting recently is that most of those specialists are now participating in an improved Allegheny County task force and leadership team where we have commitment from the top to try to bring everyone together to improve the system.
Now it's changed so much. We've gone through another renovation. There's a much different kind of more broad-based board, I think, in terms of size, in terms of diversity of people on the board. The much larger program than we had before. There weren't batterers programs, and back in the day, I think there was really just it was a short-term shelter. The counseling programs, the children's programs, the IT work, the finances, the whole thing's just gotten much more complicated, much more sophisticated than it was. But seems like probably 40 some years ago.
What the community means to Women's Center and Shelter is, without exaggeration, everything. The community means everything to us. We could not do the work that we do without the community. Whether we're talking about our community partners, whether we're talking about volunteers, whether we're talking about donors, on every sense of the word, the community is what makes Women's Center and Shelter tick. Without the community, Women's Center and Shelter literally wouldn't exist.
My parents were Ted and Sherley Craig. My parents became involved at Women's Center and Shelter over 30 years ago. The involvement started when my father was a partner at Kirkpatrick and Lockhart, which is a law firm downtown. Rachel Laurie Allen, who is a longtime shelter board member, and she chairs the Celebrating Survivors event, approached my father to secure the firm's support for the shelter's needs and services. He readily agreed, and he also provided his own personal support and involvement. Through over 30 years of the involvement, we've seen Nicole Molinaro and her entire team work so tirelessly. They're dedicated, they're devoted, they're engaged, they're talented, and they're hardworking, and they make such a profound impact on the lives of so many in the community. And so my sisters and I are, I think, grateful that our parents began working with such an exceptional organization and made us aware of the important work being done here.
Don was one of the first male board members here. And when I look back then, that wasn't so common. So I love that that was his involvement, or one of his involvements, but that was one that was very dear to his heart and remains so. And then he brought our family into it too, and for the grandchildren. To this day, there's another association with some very dedicated volunteers at UPMC in the Wolf Center for Safety. And they come 2 or 3 times a year to prepare 2 or 3, usually lunch and dinner for the ladies here. And usually I'm with them, or my daughter, Julie Wolf-Rost, is there. Oftentimes her children, our grandchildren, are there. So that continues on, and I hope it always will, because I love that, and I think Don would too.
For me, The engagement with the children when we're here has always felt good, bringing smiles to those kids' faces. When I was in 10th grade, spending a summer here, just being on the floor with them, or watching Sloan decorate cookies with them, or Maxwell blowing bubbles at a barbecue or something, and just hoping that that was a bright spot in their day.
Over the last 50 years, there's been so much change, but yet so many things remain the same. I think about our donors and our supporters who, through their generosity, we've been able to continue the work of Women's Center and Shelter for over 50 years, provide new programs, new services for our survivors. I think about all the board of directors, beyond none. They've been so very supportive.
I have stayed at Women's Center and Shelter for the last 28 years because the work has immense value to me. Working with survivors, seeing their successes, their problems, and overall their amazing resiliency has really motivated me to continue to try to do better as an attorney in the domestic violence field. And all of the support of my coworkers has really made it possible.
What motivates me to continue to do the work is very simply those we work with. Our clients who are experiencing domestic violence are the bravest, most resilient, strongest people I've ever met. And they really are the whole motivation for what I do.
I just marvel to this day. I'm sorry. Of what a special, unique person that Ellen was. And then they would say she was the heart of the movement and my mother was the brains. And that combination was the key. And when they recognized this need, they did something about it.
I just have to say that there's not too many women in the world that would do what those two women did. They literally gave up so much of their time, their talent, and their treasure to build the Women's Center and Shelter to save women like me.
They would be so proud of everything that everybody's doing, and it would be just perfectly fitting in with their goal. They wanted it to be available to the most number of people possible and their children. And the fact that we have this building, and I just had a short tour, it's just incredible. They're smiling down.
Anne and Ellen are no longer with us, but we are grateful to have their children and extended family with us tonight. On behalf of the Craig family, I'd like to invite Carol Steytler and Christine Berliner to the stage to accept the Sherley and Ted Craig Humanitarian Award on behalf of their mothers.
I think better I could buy Carrie. Do they mind?
Although I'm nervous about being up here, I will just forge ahead. Forging ahead is a choice and a behavior exemplified by our mothers, Ann Steytler and Ellen Berliner. Mom hated public speaking. She told me that once during a high school presentation she heard a banging noise, then realized it was her knees knocking together. That fear of public speaking never went away, but the issues of domestic violence were so important that Mom forged ahead in spite of it. She volunteered on the Speakers Bureau for the Women's Center and Shelter and pushed aside her anxiety in order to educate and activate her audience. That same forge ahead ethic helped Ann and Ellen create the Women's Center and Shelter. Our mothers saw a problem and began to work on it. A years-long process still happening today. Honoring Ann and Ellen with the Sherley and Ted Craig Humanitarian Award is extra special because the Craig family and their works embody that same forge ahead principle. We thank you for recognizing the vision our mothers acted on. If Ellen were here today, she'd marvel at what is now the Women's Center and Shelter and at this spectacular event. Then she would look out at this crowd and say, "There's more to be done." To that end, I applaud everyone in the audience for contributing to the more that is tomorrow's work. Thank you for your commitment to the Women's Center and Shelter. Know that it really does make a difference as we each continue to forge ahead. Now, you heard Carol say that Ellen was the heart and Ann was the brains, and we think that has swapped places in this generation, especially as we worked on our two speeches. So now I'd like to present the heart of us two.
Thank you. My siblings and their families and I were very excited to be here with you. If this were a potluck gathering back in the day, Mom would have brought her famous strawberry rhubarb puff. It's like a cobbler. And indeed, we'd like to thank the Craig family for honoring our moms with this distinguished award today. Both lifelong fighters for peace, justice, and equality. Creative listening was their thing, which is, you'd have to be in the loop. Anyway, Ann's desire to pursue social work in the 60s met with Ellen's passion for outreach, which I encountered as a teenager, and it still amazes me to this day. A dynamic duo, how fortunate it is that fate brought the two of them together. The original concept was a much-needed gathering place for women, which quickly evolved into a shelter as for domestic violence revealed itself. They sprang into action, educating others, writing grants, and coordinating with a few other shelters in existence at the time. They saw the positive impacts the center had on women and children. Ideally, we would all love to live in a world where that need no longer exists. But here we are, 50 years later, and that need is stronger than ever. The fact that the shelter has become the state-of-the-art facility is thanks to all of you here who continue the work and carry on our mother's legacy, especially those of you who received support from the center and have carried it forward by becoming advocates for others. We appreciate you and thank you all.
It is so wonderful to hear about their legacies and watch that video and see those photos from that time and place and how far this organization has come. Please continue to eat while I tell you this fun story. Last year at this event, I told a story about the first time I volunteered, and I was nervous to share it, and I was told by Kristen that more people volunteered that night to do what I did than ever in history. So I'm going to tell you now, don't volunteer to do this. They still have enough offering, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. So in 2019, after covering a few domestic violence cases, I wanted to do more. I asked Kristen, what do you need? And she said, we need people to make a family-style meal. I said, I can do that. That was a lie. I couldn't. But I set my mind to making, how many people did we feed? 40 people. I set my mind to making dinner for 40 people. I made 100 homemade meatballs. I made 2 huge vats of homemade sauce. And the whole time I was doing it, I was saying to myself, I just want to do more, and I hope this is enough. I hope this home-cooked meal makes these women happy tonight. And so I strapped my 2 toddlers into my minivan, and I strapped in 2 huge pans of homemade spaghetti and meatballs. And as I was driving down the parkway, full of joy, someone cut me off. And I slammed on my brakes, and both pans flew upside down on the floor. And I don't know if anybody here has 2 toddlers under about 5 years old in a minivan. The floor wasn't great. And every ounce of it had to be thrown away. And so I thought fast, I thought on my feet, I went to the grocery store, I got noodles and sauce, stopped by a friend's house and made it quickly on the stove. And when I got there with my children, the women were welcoming with open arms. They were incredibly grateful for the food in front of them. And they shared stories, and we talked, and we had a meal together. And I realized in that moment, I didn't need to do anything extra special. I didn't need to make 100 homemade meatballs. Just showing up meant something. And so I believe they have a lot of people who volunteer to cook a meal these days, but you're here tonight, and we're grateful for this. And if there's anything in your mind that you can do to help, I promise you, these women truly appreciate what's being done for them after their darkest times. With that said, I hope you enjoy the 3rd course, if you're not already very full. Thank you. Before we get started with the final portion of our program, can we please give a big hand to the staff of Dianoya's Eatery for such wonderful service and delicious food. Now I'd like to welcome to the stage Maggie Prescott, Chief of Mission Integration at Women's Center and Shelter, to draw the winning ticket for the 50/50 raffle and talk about the future.
All right. Thank you, Cara, and thank you to everyone who participated in our 50/50 for 50 raffle. Thanks to your generosity, we have raised $2,640, and half of that could be yours in a minute. But first, let me explain how this is going to work. We have a lot of people here tonight, some in front of us, some behind us, and some in a different room. So I'm going to need your help to let me know who our winner is tonight. If you have the winning ticket, I'd like for you to stand up and shout, "I'm a winner." Can we practice that? On the count of 3, let's all shout, "I'm a winner." 1, 2, 3. All right, that was very good. Okay, let's see who the lucky person is going to be. 080633. Again, that is 080633. And we have a winner! Congratulations! You can turn in your winning ticket by the check-in door at the elevator at the end. Thank you. Congratulations again. And we would be remiss without talking briefly about the future of the Women's Center and Shelter. As Kristen mentioned earlier in tonight's program, while our ultimate goal is to end domestic violence, our focus is to meet the evolving needs of victims and survivors for as long as they exist. We have done that in various ways throughout the years, such as creating new and innovative programming, adjusting our ways of doing business during the COVID-19 pandemic, and engaging on a deeper level through systems advocacy in the community on behalf of survivors and their children. The one constant in all this change has been the unwavering support of the community around us. On behalf of the staff, we'd like to thank all of you for making our work possible. Now, will you please help me welcome to the stage Erin Gibson Allen, Chairperson of the Women's Center Shelter's Board of Directors.
Thank you, Maggie. And thank you to everybody in attendance tonight. We are so grateful for all of you showing up tonight. This is a record-breaking crowd for a very important event. I share Nicole Molinaro's sentiment. What a pleasure and a privilege to be chair of the board tonight when we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Women's Center and Shelter. It's a wonderful night. So thank you all for being here. It's an honor to be chair of the board because I get to work with wonderful board members who show up, they're tireless, they're smart, they're focused, and they care about the organization that we serve. And I get to see behind the scenes, and every time somebody asks me, oh, do you know so-and-so from Women in Center and Shelter? Do you know Maggie? Do you know Kristen? Do you know Jake? I always say, oh yeah, I do, they're the best. Because they're all the best. They work so hard, they're so smart, they're so talented, and they're really tireless about their work here for Women's Center. So I'd like to give all the staff of Women's Center and Shelter another round of applause for all their tireless work. So I have the privilege of introducing what I think is one of the most special parts of the evening. At the board meetings for Women in Center and Shelter, we do something that's very moving, and it keeps us focused on our mission, and we're going to share that idea with you here tonight. We do what we call mission moments at our board meetings. We always have someone from the organization or a survivor or someone who has been impacted by domestic violence come and speak to the board to share their experience with us. And we're going to do a little bit of that with you tonight. So I'm really going to encourage everyone's attention on what's about to happen. Tonight, we have the privilege of hearing from 6 astoundingly brave survivors who have agreed to share what the Women's Center and Shelter has meant to them. So let's take a moment, if everybody can, and quiet your conversations and listen to the voices of these 6 special survivors. Thank you.
The service I received at Women's Center Shelter was group therapy. Before reaching out to WC&S, I didn't know who I was, and I was the type of person who was a people pleaser. For about a good first year of the group, I didn't really say much. I didn't really talk. I just sat here and listened to other people and what they're going through. And once I decided to say something, because I was really going through a rough day, and I just had to say something, and once I did, I felt welcome, had welcome arms, and everyone just made me feel so comfortable that after that I started to open up more. And there's no other word that can explain it but empowering. It's everything that you can ever imagine once you get to that step where you feel safe and secure, and it's definitely taking your power back of your life. I had met someone during the beginning of COVID, and for about 6 months, it was a very nice experience. He ran bubble baths and made me dinner. Was absolutely everything you could think someone could be. He began to drink heavily. A lot of the time, he became very physical and very restrictive. I stayed with him for maybe a year. Throughout this entire time, I was able to talk with Jenny at the center. I began to gather some of my things and stayed in a motel, was able to communicate with Jenny, who sprang right into action and had me a space in the shelter by the next day. I felt like I had a friend. I felt like I had a support that I could always rely on and that believed me.
The reason I reached out to WC&S was due to a very toxic, abusive relationship that I was in. And at that time, I needed a safe space to go to. My decision to finally reach out became due to me feeling there was no other option. And at that time, I definitely felt I had to push to get the help I needed, to step out. And once I made that call, it was never a regret. It was the best decision that I made. They provided me with the resources, information as far as groups during my stay here, as well as one-on-one counseling. They've helped me with a lot. The children's program helped me by allowing me to have visitation with my children, and they opened their doors up for me and my children and welcomed us.
I felt like I wasn't going to make it. I didn't feel like I had suicidal thoughts, but I more or less felt like my world is just crumbling. I needed an outlet. I needed someone to be, there for me besides my family, because they were more or less like, oh, I hope you'll be okay. And that's all they could, offer me. And I sat down and I was trying to reflect on the different things that happened to me with domestic violence over the years. And I called your shelter, and I just asked how I can get help with like therapy or some kind of assistance with, dealing with domestic violence in the past. My experience in the groups on Tuesday has been refreshing. It's something to look forward to every Tuesday of my life. When you're having a bad week, you talk about your week through the group. We all give each other, inspirational quotes, or we, just listen to each other. There's no judgment there. It's actually been the best thing I've ever been in.
My ex, he was, being weird that day, and so he started strangulating me in the car because I refused to, whatever reason that, he wanted to, start on me. And he's never been that weird or never wanting to put his hands on me, ever. My legal advocate, she was there every step of the way. I mean, it was to know that she was there to support me, to guide me, to let me know that, I was in the right place, doing the right thing to prevent somebody else in the outside world to go through the same predicament that I went through. It was just totally awesome because I had the support. Quite naturally, it was a new thing, and never been through it, but I had the support. And when I realized that I had so much support, it was just beautiful.
When I reached out to WC&S, I had been feeling really alone in this situation that was happening to me. I felt really unsupported in all the avenues I'd tried already. And when I got in touch with the legal advocates, I really felt supported. During the sentencing of my abuser, I had the legal advocates by my side, helping me feel uplifted, helping me feel supported,
and guiding me through the process.
I felt like we were a team. I really did. I didn't feel like they were doing something to me. I feel like we were doing together, and I really believe that, which is great because now that I work here, I see that that's actually one of the most important pillars of our mission, and that's actually exactly how I felt. So that's wonderful.
It just made me feel that there is people out there that can help you and understand your problems and what you're going through. And I just never really experienced anything like this because it's more or less of everything I asked for, I received, you know what I mean? As far as like help with mental things or, we were low on food and it was just like, I didn't expect the gift cards to get abundance of food for the whole month.
I'm relieved that the mission it reflects how it actually goes, at least from my perspective. I know it's not always like that, but it's not just lip service. It's not. I mean, I did it kind of in the reverse, right? Like I already knew that because I was a client, right? And then coming in, I'm like, yeah, this checks out. This is how it's supposed to be.
The WC&S staff that I worked with were incredibly professional and compassionate. They took the time to sit. I never felt that they had to be a million places, even though I know they do. They always made me feel like I was the only one.
They're like family to me at this point. They've become family. They've become strength, guidance, definitely some laughter in there through the hard times to get through, and encouragement.
It means a lot. It definitely has been a staple in my life. Just helping women and helping survivors in general has always been a great thing. Definitely in my life, it has helped me become a better person, has helped me find myself. And I have seen other people and met other people that have also found themselves and has gotten out of situations. So I think it is a great program.
If you have experience with the women's shelter, they will help you. They will, give you all the help you need. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to tell how you feel because they might have a solution for all your problems.
The women's shelter is there. The people is there to support you. Don't put yourself through a situation that you'll be sorry for down the road.
I owe WC&S my life. And I mean, I would not be here with you today without this center.
I love this place. Like when you come in here, you feel home. No matter when I come in this door. That's what it is for me.
Can the survivors in the video who are here tonight, and anyone who is here tonight who identifies as a survivor or a child witness, please stand for a round of applause if you're comfortable. Thank you for your courage, and thank you to Leslie, Kate, Shaylin, Delisha, Danielle, and Taylor for sharing your stories. I'd like to now welcome to the stage Rhonda Fleming, Chief of Prevention, Intervention, and Outreach.
Thank you, Erin. Good evening. Good evening. There we go. Thank you. Alrighty, so we have heard many powerful stories tonight, each one a testament to what we can achieve when supported by the community around us. Tonight's mission moment is an opportunity to give support to Women's Center and Shelter and the more than 7,500 adults and children that we serve each year. There will be 5 levels of giving, beginning with $1,000 and ending with $74 in honor of Women's Center's founding in 1974, the year I got my driver's license. When you hear the level that you'd like to support, simply raise your hand. There are people in 3 separate spaces, but no spotters, so we're working on the honor system. Mission Moment donations may be made via check or credit card at the checkout table by the elevators, online by visiting WC&S50.org, WCS50.org, or by scanning the QR code on page 5 of your program book with your smartphone. All donations made to the Mission Moment will be matched dollar for dollar up to a total of $25,000 by the A.J. Sigismunda Palumbo Charitable Trust. That does deserve a round of applause. Let's get started. You can simply raise your hand. Who will make a gift of $1,000, which can provide 20 hours of free legal representation for survivors seeking protection from abuse, known as PFA orders, child custody, spousal support, and/or divorce? $1,000, please raise your hand. Thank you so much. That is beautiful. Who will make a gift of $500, which can provide 14 hours of group counseling for survivors of domestic violence? $500? Well, thank you so much. Who will make a gift of $250, which can provide 15 shelter residents with transportation to court and appointments for housing, medical, and other needs? $250. Thank you so much. Who will make a gift of $100, which can provide 1 night of safety in the emergency shelter, including meals? $100? Thank you, thank you. And for 1974, who will make a gift of $74, which can fund the distribution of essential care packages for up to 50 survivors? $74? Thank you. Many thanks to everyone for their participation. If you prefer to make a gift of a different amount, say $2,000, $5,000, whatever, please, other than what was mentioned, you can absolutely do so. Please remember to pay your pledge at the checkout table at the conclusion of the program, or online at WCS50.org, or by scanning the QR code on page 5 in your program booklet. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for being with us here tonight. Before we formally conclude tonight's program, just a couple reminders. Number 1, Happy Mother's Day to everybody. We would like for a mother at every table to please take the floral arrangement. No floral arrangements should be left behind. Take them. Fight amongst yourselves for those. Please note that the silent auction closes at 8:45 sharp. Payment can be made online or at the checkout table, where you can also pick up your winnings after 8:50. Cookies, ice cream by Millie's, and coffee are also now available in the cocktail reception area. Thank you so much for attending. Have a wonderful night.